Hi, my name is Max Haynes, and I'm an industrial and systems engineer, but I'm also getting my master's in finance. And so, on par with our previous video about finance and a little bit about stocks and stuff, we're going to talk today about how we're able to view information on the actual price of stocks, not just the underlying companies and how they're performing. And so, we can come in here. There's a really helpful tool called Google Finance. You can literally just type in Google Finance. And while you cannot invest directly through Google Finance, it does allow you to look at the stock prices and about some of the other things about stocks. So, for instance, last time we were looking at Mosaic. So, we'll look at Mosaic again. So, we'll go here to Mosaic. And as we can see, Mosaic is currently trading right now at $32.21 a share. So, companies are sold in shares, or shares of the company are sold. And we can look here very quickly at what the 6 months looks like, the year to day, a year, 5 years, and the maximum of this company. So you can see right when this company went public, or the maximum at least that we have data on. And so these are important things in order to be able to realize. But so here's kind of some in the news. It'll pop up a little section about the news about the stock and a little bit about their. Remember earlier we looked at their financial performance. Here it'll show you some of the big picture financial performance stuff, their revenue, their net income, some of the things, their earnings per share to EPS. This is diluted EPS, which is a little bit more technical, but it'll show you some of their different things that are going on with this company. And you can even look at it annually or quarterly. But so that kind of summarizes in a really nice way and shows the year over year change of these different financial metrics. So that's a really cool way. It also tells you a little bit about the company. Remember earlier we saw that James O'Rourke when we looked up how much he made. And so we're able to see all of this stuff. We can look at some of the actual stock price differences here. And so that's important as well to be able to just see. And we can compare it actually really easily on Google Finance to another company. So Nutrien is another company that work in a similar space as well. They make fertilizers. So we can show them. And then now we have both of them side by side and we can see who's been outperforming who. And so that's a very interesting thing to be able to see there. And it's nice to be able to tell, especially if maybe, you want to get into a certain space, like, but you aren't sure exactly how you want to get into, like which company you want to take in that's in that space. And so this can be a really good way to tell that. And you can look at them, let's look over the year. So you can see Mosaic has outperformed Nutrien throughout the year. Um, but even though Nutrien's stock price is actually much higher than Mosaic's stock price, but the stock price has been rising much faster for Mosaic. And so these are important things to be able to see and to talk about. Um, but that's one of the really nice things about Google Finance. And you can look up anything on here. So let's say you wanted to go for something a little bit more name brand, talk about Apple. And so we can pull up information on Apple. We have all the news, things that happened recently, because news can really change a stock's price. We can look at their financial performance. We have all the information here. We have some of their previous information about the stock. And this is an important one here, is the dividend yield. And that's how much money you're going to get paid just for holding on to the stock. And so that's important as well. It usually get paid out either in quarters or annually. But you can look at the performance of this stock, and if you look at the max on the performance of this stock, I mean, you can see just how much Apple really grew. You're talking about people say, oh, well, they owned Apple way back when. Well, they could have owned Apple as cheap back here as 8 cents a share, and that one share today is now worth $133. And I wouldn't expect that to happen with every company. There's so many companies in here during the dot-com bubble in the early 2000s that everyone thought they were gonna end up like Apple, or everyone they bought there were going to be really big. And the large majority of those companies, the reason it's called a bubble is it was a collapse in the stock market there. All those companies did not become Apple. They actually went to zero and they went bankrupt, or they just didn't go near as high, kind of stayed flat. But occasionally you do have companies that really jump off here. And so those are things that everybody hopes to be able to pick them, but it's hard to be able to pick those. And for beginners, I think the best thing to do is to actually just be able to follow these. There's different ways in order to be able to follow the big ones. Like here's your Dow Jones Industrial Average. Here's the S&P 500. And then here's the NASDAQ. and Russell. And so all of these are different metrics. They're basically groups of stocks. They combine a lot of stocks and they kind of just give you an overall idea of the market. And there's actual individual stocks that you can buy that will follow these different metrics. You can look them up and stuff. And those are probably the safest bet for an early investor, because while you're not going to see that 300% gains, typically the stock market as a whole is going to go up. And so you can see this big drop off during 2020. You'll see another drop here during 2008 during the financial crisis. And when you go to the NASDAQ, you'll see this dot-com bubble here. So the dot-com bubble was in around late 1990s, early 2000s, like right around 2000. And you'll see this little dot-com bubble here where they got this spike and then fell off, climbed back up. The NASDAQ is much more tech focused than the Dow Jones, the S&P 500, or the Russell Index. And then you'll see that little collapse again during 2008. As you can tell, 2008 wasn't as bad of a collapse for the tech market. And then lately, due to the rise of Google, Apple, Amazon, all of those companies, Tesla, Tesla might not be in the NASDAQ, but the others are. And you'll see that massive spike that they've been on. But if you look at the Dow Jones average, and my internet's lagging a little bit, but you look at the Dow Jones average and you go to max, you'll see that the tech bubble didn't hit as hard for the entire market there, but the 2008 financial collapse did. And here's 2020 financial collapse as well. It wasn't really a collapse, but the coronavirus pandemic causing a steep drop in prices. So it's good to be able to see these things and see how constant, even if it does go down, it always comes back up. And that's important to remember. That's why it's good for young investors to be able to get into that. Another really cool thing with Google Finances is the ability to pull them into Google Sheets. And so I'll just show this really quickly. And there's a lot of ways to be able to go about doing this. But you can put equals Google Finance. And then you'll be able to see here that you can pull that information. Let's pull Mosaic, that company we were just looking at. What attribute do we want to pull? We want to pull price. And then what start day. So we'll put that as, let's just leave it blank and it should give us today's price. Sorry, it didn't like something about that. Let's use Google. OG. Let's go to the end here. And I'm having some trouble with it. I haven't used this in a little while, but you can spend some time learning how to use it. You go in here to Google Finance. You can actually hit learn more, and it'll pull up some stuff over here. So here's a sample, and I'll pull this up just so that you can see it really quickly. And you can see here is all of the stock information, and it's doing it from daily from 2014-1/1 to 2014-12/31. And so it's giving you what the price was every day, the average price was for that day. And so that's really cool to be able to see that kind of stuff about the stock. So we can go back real quick. We'll put that in here, this Google Finance. But then what is important here is this time we're going to put something called Sparkline, open parentheses around that Google Finance call that you just did. And then it's going to take just a second. It's taking it a little bit to load in all the data. But Sparkline is an internal error. But essentially what Sparkline is able to do is Sparkline will take all of that data and make it into a line that you can see really easily. And so that's kind of neat to be able to see that. So yeah, it's a really helpful tools are being able to use Google Finance, especially in coordination with Google Sheets. You can kind of make your own stock screener and whatnot using Google Sheets. And I won't go into all that. There's a lot of resources online that can further explain that as it gets a little bit complicated. But if you're looking for a way to find in a really quick fashion a bunch of companies, a bunch of information about those stocks, this is a really good way to do it. And then if you want to take a real deep dive, you can go into follow what we did on our other video and really look deeper into these companies' financial situations and how they're performing. So hopefully you learned something today, and best of luck.